I'm here to tell you all about Advisor 3.0 Change Agents. The must-attend conference for financial planners is happening in London on 18th of May 2023. Sizzling keynote speakers include Baroness Karen Brady, CBE, and the legend that is Seth Godin, plus Ola Abdul and Sean Hegarty. Co-hosted by Abraham Okasanya and Robin Wigglesworth, guests can enjoy insightful interactive panels, debates, networking, Q&A sessions, and so much more. Grab them now at www.timeline.co/Advisor 3.0. You're listening to Retirementals.
Hello and welcome to Retirementals. My guest today is on a mission to help 1 million women become financially resilient. She's an award-winning financial planner and certified financial coach on a mission to reduce anxiety and increase financial empowerment. Catherine Morgan, welcome to Retirementals.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Abraham.
So, Catherine, I thought if I just go off reading your profile, the fact that you've been on, BBC Channel 4 Women's Hour, you've been featured, your book and your work has been featured in the Telegraph, in the Times. I thought that we wouldn't get to an opportunity to actually speak to you because you've got an incredible track record. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, but take us right back. How did you get into the world of financial planning and financial coaching?
Yeah, thank you. Such a good question. And it's so interesting, actually, even you just sharing, you've been featured in this and you've been featured in this. For me, none of that matters. I think a lot of the perception around creating a strong brand and a reputation is very, it's ego-centered, it's status-driven. And for me, that's never been what my work's been about, and for those of you that have never come across my work before, I started in financial services, as most people did, as a 18-year-old. I just finished college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go and study law or journalism. Like, those are the two things that sparked my curiosity. And my sister worked at the bank, and I remember having a place at uni and just not feeling quite sure that that was the path that I wanted to go and explore. And so I started working as a cashier. And within about 3 years, I'd worked through from a cashier to opening bank accounts and personal loans. And then I started as a mortgage advisor, and I kind of got into the real golden handshake position, I think, looking back in my early 20s, of making some good money. And then I wanted to have my own house. So I bought my first house, and then I wanted a car. And so, I really fell into financial services because I had no idea what else I wanted to do. And I quickly discovered that I really enjoyed people and human behavior. And I still now remember the types of clients who would come and visit me at the counter when I used to work at the Halifax. And there was this one character that I still remember now, and he used to come in every Sunday, and he'd come in looking very disheveled. His hair wasn't washed, he had dirty clothes. It looked like he had no money. But I remember every Sunday he would hand his passbook over to me, and he had thousands and thousands of pounds in his account. And even at that age, I remember being really curious to the perception of what he looked like versus how that was represented in his account. And I actually got to know this guy quite well over the year that I was working as a cashier. And he had some very strong addictions. And, he would come in, he would withdraw a lot of money, but he would then pay it back in again. He was addicted with gambling and drugs. And I just remember thinking, who is supporting him with his relationship with money? And over the time I worked in banks, which ended up being 20 years, I then went on to become an IFA, a financial advisor. I then discovered financial planning, but I had a terrible relationship with money myself. I would make money and spend money, make money and spend money. And my ability to hold on to money was very much linked to my ability and my self-worth, or lack of. And I didn't feel deserving to keep hold of wealth, to keep hold of money, because of what money represented to me. And I just got super curious about the human behavior that sat behind my own behavior, my own relationship with money. And it wasn't really until I got into my 30s that I started to explore this through psychology, through coaching, through some therapeutic modalities, that I actually discovered that the relationship we have with money is really a mirror reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. And through my own personal journey of going from £30,000 of recurring debt shame cycles in my 20s to now running 3 very successful businesses, that I understood that it wasn't about the practical steps. It wasn't about knowing more about how to manage money. It was about managing my relationship to it.
Unpack those 3 businesses for us. What are they? What do they do? How are they different from one another?
Yeah, so our core business is we support female entrepreneurs, so consumers, through an online version of different courses. We run retreats over in the beautiful island of Jersey in the Channel Islands, which is where I now live. And we support women to take them through 3 main steps, which is about deserving to have more. And it's very much to do with their sense of self-identity, their ability to hold on to more, and their ability to give and grow wealth. And when I say wealth, I'm not just talking about money. This is, it's an all-encompassing state of mind. It's a state of being. And that's our core business. That's the Catherine Morgan brand. And so we invest a lot of our time in that space. I also, as part of that work, we do a lot of work around financial abuse. That's a specific area that I feel very called to support locally on the island. I do a lot of work with the domestic abuse charity. And we also invest a lot of our proceeds from our book actually to those charities. And I went to visit Richard Branson in Necker Island last year to really try and identify ways through the Virgin Unite Trust work how we can push that forward, in the world. So that's the main core business. We also have the Money Panel, which is a financial coach training business. So this was a business that we created 3 years ago, purely from demand of financial planners and paraplanners, accountants, and financial professionals who were curious to know what financial coaching is all about and how to integrate that into their work so that they could have more meaningful conversations with clients. So we have a lovely community of financial coaches that we've supported over the last few years, and we will continue to move that forward. And that's really about empowering more financial professionals so that they can go on to empower their clients. It's the whole cycle of transformation. And in doing so, they also hugely transform their own relationship with money. It almost is like a byproduct of the program. So those are the 2 core businesses. And then we actually have a brand new business, which if you're watching this on video, you may see some pictures behind me. This is an assessment tool that we are creating. It's currently in sort of testing mode. And it's called Money Story Types. And this is a tool that we've created and researched over the last 5 years. And we're also doing some university research around the psychology of why do we make certain decisions around money. And the tool is being created as a way for financial professionals to use it with new clients or existing clients, to open up the conversation around money, to make it a fun, easier conversation, to identify what are some of the behaviors that are driving our clients' decisions around money.
You're listening to Retirementals.
I am super pumped to tell you about this new incredible event experience that we've curated for the financial planning community in 2023. Advisor 3.0 Change Agent. We've curated this mind-blowing array of content, breakout sessions led by the profession's best and brightest, keynotes by world-class speakers. It's a day you don't want to miss. Co-hosting the day with me is the amazing Robin Wigglesworth, and then we have the legendary Seth Godin. Yes, that's Seth Godin as keynote. So this is happening on the 18th of May 2023 in London. Do yourself a favor. Block out the 18th of May in your diary. Get yourself registered for this amazing experience, and I look forward to seeing you there. You don't want to miss this. See you there.
You're listening to Retirementals.
I know that you used to, provide financial advice, and obviously at some point you step back from that. And I've had your story before. You spoke at I think it was Humans Under Management, and you talked about how you very, very nearly left the industry for some reason. So can you tell us a little bit about why you stepped back from the financial planning side of things? Is that because the coaching just took off, or was there a different reason behind that?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Gosh, the Humans Under Management conference seems like a million years ago, and actually that was the platform that really gave me the confidence to step into where I am now. And I'm always ever so grateful for Andy Hart's invitation to that conference. And interestingly, the day before that conference, this was the first ever speaker event I'd ever participated in. And I remember the day before, I don't even know whether Andy knows this actually, I was thinking of any excuse to avoid going and standing on that stage. And I was like, I'm just going to call in sick. Like, I was petrified of sharing my story. And for me, the journey to that day when I stood on that stage and shared my story actually came from a place of mental illness and trauma. And what had happened for me in the years prior to that is when my second son was born, Thomas, when he was just 5 weeks old, we almost lost him to bacterial meningitis. And I remember as clear as day, it was the 1st of October 2013. And he woke up on this particular morning and he wasn't himself. He wasn't feeding, he wasn't sleeping, he was making these odd grunting noises in his sleep. He just wasn't himself. And as the day progressed, his condition sort of deteriorated quite rapidly. And I remember at the time feeling like a paranoid parent. I was like, I'm sure he's absolutely fine. And as the day progressed, he just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I ended up throwing him in his car seat, drove down to A&E. I rang my husband and said, look, I'm not taking any chances. I'm taking him straight down to hospital, despite conversations with medical professionals that, just give him some Calpol, he'll be fine. And within 20 minutes of arriving in the hospital, his skin started to mottle. They put me on a wheelchair, had him in my arms, and they wheeled us straight into resuscitation.
Wow.
And it was in that moment that we had about 15 doctors kind of surrounding me in resuscitation. And at the time, I didn't really know what was going on. I kind of had a sense, a knowingness that something was wrong. But I was really optimistic. I'm a very positive person. I was like, right, what needs to happen? What's the solution to this? And I remember 3 days later, after they admitted him, that they did a lumbar puncture, which is one of the worst experiences for a parent, I think, to experience with their child. And they diagnosed him with bacterial meningitis. And they said there was like a 50-50 chance he was going to survive. And it was in that moment when we had that diagnosis and I was in hospital with him. I was really fortunate I was able to stay with him. And the instance for me was when I came out of hospital. I was diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Thomas was very unwell when he returned from home because of the consequences of having lots of antibiotics pumped into his system. And I repeated this same cycle of overspending, which had occurred in my 20s. I thought I'd fixed it and it recurred again. And I had a huge amount of anxiety. And when I went back to work a year later, I sat in the bank and I remember helping this lady who recently lost her husband. And my sales manager was like, "Did you make any sales?" And I was like, no, she didn't need any products. She just needed some support with helping her sort out her share paperwork. And, she had about 50 shares that she'd inherited. She had no idea what to do with them, what decisions to make. And she was grieving. And I remember after my boss rang me and said, "How many sales did you make today?" And I said, "I didn't make any sales today." And this was the reason. I sat there and thought, why are we focusing all of our expertise on products and solutions? Because for me, being in that hospital, being surrounded by professionals who had solutions didn't prevent me from essentially my behavior going down a route of overspending, which is a trauma response. It's a trauma response to something that has happened that is creating this behavior. And I was seeking this dopamine hit, this dopamine hit that goes on in the brain that is seeking some level of joy and excitement and happiness. And it really wasn't until I'd appreciated that. I remember going home from work that day and I just turned around to my husband and I said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm not supporting my clients in the best way." And that's when I started to really explore the psychology of money and immersing myself in qualifications and study. And it was at that point I just felt very frustrated, I guess, I wanted to help clients to get better solutions and outcomes that didn't just rely on financial products. And don't get me wrong, we need financial products. They're there to facilitate investment returns and reducing tax and all of those things. But for me, that isn't where the journey started. And it shouldn't be where the journey starts with clients. They need our help in having a better relationship with money. And when I say a better relationship with money, I don't just necessarily mean help when you're overspending, because you may not have clients who have difficulties overspending, but I can pretty much guarantee that you have clients in your portfolio that have difficulties with spending on themselves. They have difficulties with passing on wealth. They have difficulties in their emotional response when the stock market's going all over the place. They have emotional reactions or responses based on how they perceive or the meaning that they give to money. And if you think about it, so much of this is generational. So much of the beliefs that we carry around money don't actually even belong to us. They've just literally been passed down from one generation to the next. And there's evidence to show that your relationship with money is actually based on 7 generations of inherited money patterns and beliefs and traumas. And that's really interesting, because when we know this, we can start to think about some of the influences that is essentially creating the decisions that our clients are making every single day around money.
So a lot of financial planner will say, look, we're financial planners. Um, we're not therapists.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile this? Of course, there is aspect of the financial planner's job that you engage, some, behavioral coaching to guide the client. But when it comes to, deep unraveling of history, behavior, patterns, problems, traumas, you know, there's an argument that we don't have the professional qualifications and skills to deal with this, nor do the client necessarily pay us for it.
Mm-hmm. There is a distinction certainly between therapy and coaching. So this is where I think as a profession, I hear what you say, Abraham, and we are not therapists, and nor should we be. As a financial planner, our clients are not going to come to us and say, look, I have this trauma, I need some support to clear it. There's actually, it's unconscious bias that's playing out here, right? So this isn't necessarily about, well, we can't explore this with a client because we're not qualified therapists. There is a level above therapy, which is what I call a state of awareness. And there is so much that we can support clients with if we were to focus on things like their language, for example. Bringing curiosity to a client's language is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And I'll give you an example of what this might look like in the context of retirement planning. So if a client, for example, is saying things like, we ask the question, what do you want to do in retirement? What does that look like for you? And the client might start to say, well, I can't really see that. It's too far ahead. Like I can't see that. The fact that the client is saying, I just can't see that, is giving me, first of all, an indication that what's probably going on, first of all, is that the brain is not wanting to think about the future because the future is full of uncertainty. And so the brain will do its utmost best to protect you from uncertainty. And it will keep you stuck in present day, which actually we want clients to be more in present moment. So that's the first thing that might be going on there. The second thing is that if they're saying, I can't see it, they may not be visual. They might not be able to see it because we've asked them, what do you see yourself doing in retirement? Because we might be quite a visual person. And this is what I call an all auditory participation experience. If you really listen to the client's language, you can get super curious to, how do they learn and how do they think? Are they left brain dominant, logical, analytical thinkers? Are they creative, intuitive creatures? And there's quite a lot of research that shows actually that it's not a gender thing. It's not that men are logical and women are emotional. That it's not a gender thing. But actually just to understand whether your client is more left brain or right brain dominant is super helpful in the context of the work that you're doing with them. Because if they are kinesthetic, for example, they have to go and experience something. So go and help them experience what retirement looks like right now. Go and get them researching on Airbnb, their dream holiday that they're going to take when they hit 60 and take their cash-free their tax-free cash. Go and help them to experience what it would be like to go and live in a different country. Go and live there for a month, and then let's meet and talk about your experience. If they are, very connected to auditory, what they hear, then the question, tell me about, what do you want to do in your future? You're inviting that curiosity for them to explain, because they learn through what they hear. And all of that can be done in such a beautiful connection way with the client. It doesn't involve therapy. It doesn't involve understanding their traumas that have happened in the past. But I do think that we have a duty and a responsibility to bring more awareness to how does the client best make decisions around money? What are some of the experiences that they have had that are creating the meaning or the perception that they're giving to money that's ultimately feeding the behaviors? Because if we don't go anywhere near those conversations, then everything is conscious conversations. And actually, there is so much change and transformation that can occur when we can bring awareness to our clients' relationship with money and the language that they are using with it.
Fascinating stuff. So you talked about this shall I call it app or software or questionnaire that you're building around helping people understand or reveal their money types. What are the money types, and why does it matter to know what my money type is? I know I've got money coming in. I know I've got it going out. I keep the difference.
Yeah, great question. So we have discovered 5 key archetypes, if you like, with clients' relationships with money, and this has come from 5 years of working with clients on a one-to-one basis over the years in our consumer community and in group, big group programs that we run. And we've identified there are 5 main archetypes. The first one is the impulsive story type. So this is me. This was me in my 20s. These are for people who are overspenders, and often this is very much linked to status. This can be very much linked to having a status relationship with money. So you'll see this with clients who you put something in their cash flow forecast and actually it's not very accurate. They have no idea what they're really spending on money. And there's quite a lot of shame and guilt that can come up for clients around their relationship with money in that particular archetype. But when we talk about archetypes, Abraham, we don't do it as a labeling exercise. So what we don't want to do is create a label for the client where they say, oh, well, I'm impulsive, therefore this is just the reason for me being.
Yeah, I was made that way. It's not my fault.
Exactly. So when we go through the archetypes and the reports that we generate for clients, is the first thing that we do is get them to appreciate how it supports them in their relationship with money. It's actually the first step in our money narrative clearing methodology that we teach in our financial coach certification program. Is how is this supporting you? That's the question. How is this relationship with money supporting you? Now, it may be supporting them because they can make quick decisions, fast decisions. They're impulsive. If someone rang me and said, let's go to Madonna's concert tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, sure. I wouldn't even check my bank account. I would enjoy the moment. Now, as an example of an opposite narrative to that, the opposite story type would be the architects. So these are for clients who they know exactly what they're spending. They have their budget plans. They really get invested in the whole cash flow forecasting. They love the numbers. They're quite analytical. And how that supports them is that they are good planners. They like to plan ahead. They like to think ahead. However, if I rang an architect and said, oh, Madonna's playing tonight, I've got a last minute ticket, they'd be like, oh, hold on, I need to think about this. I'm not sure. I haven't planned it. And it would create a feeling of a resistance in themselves that well, to be impulsive or spontaneous would almost feel misaligned with them in some way. And for those of you that are listening to this and thinking, yep, that's me, like you'll totally relate to this. We then have the enabler story type, and the enabler story type is the overgiver. It's the people pleaser. It's the archetype who often you'll see this particularly in women, actually, from our research, that everybody else's needs come first and whatever is left is then available to that person. And this can show up in what we call a fawning response to money. A fawning response is when we psychologically, we people please, we overgive, we do everything because we want people to love and accept us. And so we make decisions based on that validation of looking after everybody else's needs first. So that's the enabler story type. And then the other two is the pacifist and the innovator. So the pacifist is somebody who shoulders a lot of responsibility. They don't want to take responsibility for making financial decisions. You'll often see this in couples, that one person will just shoulder the responsibility that, oh, my husband or my wife takes care of those decisions. Now, that can be a trauma response because for some clients, they've been through things like divorce or bankruptcies, or they've experienced bankruptcies with their parents, for example, and it can create a feeling that they don't want to have responsibility around money because of the meaning that means, what that brings, that rich people are greedy, that money is just for wealthy people, that's not for me. And they kind of create these narratives, these stories that give them a feeling that that is not nice, and so forth. They'll just pass that decision to somebody else. And then
Sorry,
we have. Do you have a question on that one?
No, carry on.
And then the final money story type is the innovator. The innovator, we actually created this archetype off a specific financial planner who will remain nameless, although he knows who he is. And when we did our research, we were like, he didn't quite fit in to one of these money story types predominantly. So most people are a mix of all of these, but they have a predominant overriding story. And we created this particular story type on this financial planner who is very entrepreneurial. They often have lots of things going on at once. They're very creative with money. They are often quite high risk takers with money. And so the innovator is always looking at new ideas. That their belief around money is, well, I'll just make more of it. Like they don't necessarily have a scarcity mindset. They have quite an abundance, quite a growth mindset around money. And they use money as a way to create good change in the world, or to use it to facilitate growth in their life, in their communities, etc. So those are the 5 story types. And as I said before, like you're not one of them over the other, but you'll have a dominance in one of those that drives the majority of the decisions that you make around money.
It's really fascinating, and I think you might have described me in there. Well, initially when you were talking about the first one, I was looking to call my wife to say, can you come listen? Can you come listen to this? Yeah, and I don't know. I think I'm more of the last one, but who knows? I would love to take your test, actually. I mean, so this is specifically about money, right? I'm assuming that this emanates from the personality of the individual. I don't know if you're familiar with, there's this American, psychologist preacher called Tim LaHaye, and he came up with the different personality temperaments, they call them. There's the sanguine and phlegmatic and choleric. And I remember, you're taking me back now. I remember just coming out of university and reading his book about all these temperaments. And, my now wife and girlfriend at the time, we spend a lot of time just wondering which ones, where do we fit? And there is overlap, as you say. But I guess my question is this a personality trait? Does it change? Or, are we, when you're working with clients, are you working with them to change this thing if it's not serving them? Or is it kind of accepting it and finding your ways around it?
Yeah, I really don't believe that we should use any personality tool, whether it's Myers-Briggs, love languages, like what there's so many.
Yeah, love languages is one, and as well, my wife she brings this thing up all the time. Your love language is touch or gift or whatever, and I always say, oh,
it's so fun. Like the love languages actually is a really great one. We use this with our team. So when we hire a team into the company, we ask them to do love languages because it's a great way to understand how we feel valued. So just to give you an example, if you haven't done love languages, like go to lovelanguages.com. It's a really great quiz. My husband, his top 2 love languages are words of affirmation and physical touch. So I basically just have to rub his arm when he's cooked and just go, that was such an amazing meal, darling. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And he's like, oh, thanks. Like he feels so valued. Whereas if someone did that to me, I'd be like, I'd find it really condescending. Like, get off. Like, what are you doing? Whereas for me, like acts of service is my highest love language. So if somebody does something to me that's really spontaneous or it shows they've put a lot of thought into it, like that makes me feel really valued. So going back to your question, I feel like the reason we've created this, first of all, is to open up fun conversations around money. And particularly in the dynamics of relationships, you know, often we are naturally attracted to the opposite personality type. There's lots of research around this in the US. And consequently, you are very likely to be in a relationship with someone who has the opposite relationship to money. You know, the architect and the impulsive often come together and it creates conflict. So we created it because we wanted to open up conversations around money. And we've used this in so many examples where we've seen huge transformations with clients because we've enabled them to open up these conversations and explore how does the story that they are telling themselves, how does the story that they have grown up around support them, and how does it challenge them? Where are the challenges for an impulsive? It might be, for example, that if you have an impulsive and an architect in a relationship, they can actually work really well together if they understand that actually that natural behavior with money is different to each other. And it's not about one person is right and one person is wrong, but that's the perception. You know, the perception is that one of you is right and one of you is wrong, hence the conflict. So harboring better conversations with money is a great way to look at it. And it's about looking at two sides of the coin. How does it support us? How does it sabotage, or how does it prevent us from making better financial decisions? How does it prevent us from being comfortable to take more risks if that's needed in our financial plan, to have better decisions around money? And then also, I think it invokes just that curiosity, you know, and anything that invokes curiosity is a great way to start to bring more trust and connection between consumers and the financial services profession, you know, professionals. There are so many clients who will never reach out to a financial planner because they feel so much guilt, shame, judgment around money that they'll never approach a financial planner. And normally, because the financial planner's website is full of the standard stuff, you know, it's the we do pensions, investments, etc. And if they have no education around that, and they then have all these emotions around money like guilt and shame, then they're not going to reach out for that support that actually they really need. So it's also a way to connect consumers with you guys, the financial professionals who, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, for sure, you're going to be curious to behaviors around money, to life coaching, to going deeper with clients. So it's about connecting and building trust in the financial services profession by having these kind of conversations.
I mean, if anyone has proven that you can turn these things to, money generating, value adding, venture business, you have. I'm just trying to think about this in my head to ask the question, how would you approach this? Would you maybe actually give us some insight in terms of how you price this thing, from a commercial point of view? So would you say, hey, look, before we even go into the conversation about financial planning and all that stuff, we're going to do this thing to understand your money, your money archetype or your money type and all that stuff. And you would price that differently, in which case, what does that look like? And then you have the traditional financial planning services, or would you just merge everything together? In which case, as a planner, I'm asking the question, well, like, basically I'm going to be doing more for the same money.
Yeah, I'm so glad you've asked that question, because certainly in our coach community, these questions are asked all the time. How do I integrate this into these conversations without spending more time and less money? Because, of course you're running a business, it's got to be commercially viable. And I think that there's several ways that we've seen successful financial planners integrate these kind of methodologies and coaching into their businesses. And there's neither is right and neither is wrong. But what we've seen, certainly when I was a financial planner, is that we would just use this as a tool to better the advisor, to get more curious to those conversations in your your fact-finding process, in that discovery meeting with the clients. And that's certainly one very simple way where you may decide as part of that process that you send them a quiz to complete before they come in, that you maybe monitor that with them over a period of time to look at, well, currently you're very predominant in impulsive. Let's see if we can work together over the course of the relationship to improve that. But there's got to be a willingness there for the clients. And I think it depends on also the type of client and the type of business that you're creating. If you're building a business that is intergenerational wealth planning, where potentially you want to even showcase your business in a way that is completely different to other financial planners in your local town, for example, this is the way to do it. This is the way to really emphasize that what we're doing is not just planning, it's not just advice, it's that deeper level of transformation. And I'm talking physical financial transformations. I'm talking about shifting a client's relationship with money from being an overspender to saving more money and investing more money and creating them more financial stability, more financial freedom, all of those things that clients are desiring. But the financial product in itself is not going to solve that. We've got to help them to shift those behaviors. So I do think it is a way that the advisor can be upskilled in the softer skills of those conversations around money. And I also think there is an opportunity, and we see many of our coaches doing this, are by, I would say, a smaller minority, is they actually are setting up standalone financial coaching businesses, financial education businesses. They're using social media or podcast platforms to communicate great financial education and great conversations about clients' relationships with money. And clients are coming into those businesses. They're like, well, I never would have contacted you as a financial planner because I need help with this. And the coach will work with them on a standalone basis as a financial coach proposition, which typically would look like, a number of sessions over a period of time, 6 sessions over 3 months, for example, to really dive deep into their relationship with money. And then at that point, the client has experienced such tremendous shift in their relationship with money. They're now ready to come and work with you in the regulated capacity and build a financial plan and have a look at some of the things that they've just, quite frankly, been burying their head in the sand about. So there is space with financial coaching to fully integrate it into the work that you're already doing to make you a better advisor. And there's also space for those people who either don't want to be regulated. Let's face it, I made the decision 4 years ago. I didn't want to be regulated anymore. The joy for me was in the connection with the client. And I tried all the things. I outsourced to paraplanners. I got rid of all the admin headaches. I tried all those things, and I still didn't feel that this was the work I really wanted to do. And there will be financial professionals that are listening to this that are feeling like that. But I also think that there is space for these things to happen conjointly together. And I would love it if more financial professionals, whether it's coming through our program or somebody else's program, or just upskilling yourself to explore these conversations, I can almost guarantee you that you'll have much better fulfillment in your life as a financial planner, and your clients will begin to see such emotional shifts and connections that they will stay with you. You're going to improve your retention of your clients. And you're going to get more referrals. You're going to potentially be able to shift those generational patterns, not just for that client sitting in front of you, but for every single future generation. And you can tell I'm so passionate about this, right? This is where the opportunity is. We can create opportunity to not just help the client sitting in front of us. If they can shift their relationship with money, they get to change the epigenetics, the generations of money beliefs that they're going to pass to their grandchildren, their children, their great-great-grandchildren. This is where we can create powerful change. And when I say epigenetics, what I'm talking about there is that at a cellular level, the beliefs that we carry about ourselves are passed through the generations. This is the work of Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, epigenetics. We know that there is research that confirms that the beliefs we carry about ourselves come from our parents. It's in our DNA. And so that's incredibly powerful to start to think about. This isn't about changing the client sitting in front of you. This is about generational change for every future generation ahead of us. And that
Fascinating stuff. If anyone's wondering about that reference to Bruce Lipton, there's a book on Amazon, The Biology of Belief: Unleashing the Power of Unconsciousness, Matter, and Miracles. That's fascinating.
It's a really hard book. I'll be honest. I've read it. It's a really hard book to digest. The book that I'd actually recommend, in addition to, I mean, I would actually watch his videos probably more than read his book. Right. But the book that I would love to recommend around this subject is actually by somebody called Mark Woolin, which is Wolyn, Mark Woolin, and it's called It Didn't Start With Me.
Huh.
And that actually covers in a much simpler, non-scientific-y way lots of case studies about how the epigenetics works of core beliefs and traumas being carried through from one generation to the next.
Fascinating. Okay,
I hope Bruce Lipton's not listening to this show.
Yeah, no, I'm adding them to my Amazon basket, and then I have to persuade myself to read them. No, it's really fascinating. Thank you for so much wisdom and value that you brought to this, Catherine. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you your tips for you're building your brand and getting media presence. I know you said at the start, it's not all about brand. It's not about being on BBC, Radio 4 and all these things. This is what successful people do anyway. Like once they've achieved these things, they kind of trivialize it for the rest of us. But how, what are your thoughts? You've clearly done a brilliant job in terms of getting the work that, and I think this is important, by the way, getting the work that you do, getting media attention for the work that you do. I feel sometimes that we're in this world of financial planning, this thing that transforms people's lives, but nobody's heard about it, and we think that's a great thing. I don't. So what are your tips? What are your quick wins or not so quick wins for building brand and building a brand and gaining media attention?
Yeah, great question. I think what started the media coverage and things was sharing your story. And that's a really hard thing to do because a lot of people will think, oh, but I don't really have a story. Like I don't have anything major that's happened to me, or I don't have anything significant. But that's how my personal brand really exploded, was when I started to just be really honest about things that were happening in my life that would be useful for other people to hear. Because actually, it's not really about your story. It's about what message the person that you're sharing it with receives and the impact that it has for them in their life. And a lot of people don't share their story because there's embarrassment about putting your face on social media, or recording a video because your hair's not perfect, or there's all these expressions of that stop us from getting visible. But for me, it's not about you. It's about how you can support other people to create that an emotional shift in themselves that makes them curious to want to follow you and hear more of your work. So I think that was a really big thing for me. Like, as I said, standing on Andy Hart's stage was probably the first thing that I did. And quite soon after that, I actually had a real resistance about being seen. I had a big wound, if you like, about what will people say about me, and I had all of these things that came up, and so I just started podcasting. Because for me, grabbing my mic, I didn't even have to be on a video, was so easy. And I started my podcast 4 years ago. It's Not About the Money, which used to be called In Her Financial Shoes. Some of you may be familiar with it. And I have had so much PR opportunity off the back of the podcast over the years, to the point now where we get weekly journalists contact us because of the platform that we chose to commit energy to, and commitment and consistency. And the podcast is always like, I've never missed a week for the last 4 years, and it brings me so much joy. I'd love to just grab my mic, sometimes completely unscripted, unplanned, because I'm the impulsive, right? And I just talk, and I just see what happens. And so find a platform that brings you joy. What's the one that you're spending most of your time on right now? If I asked you to look at your phone, are you on LinkedIn? Are you on YouTube? Are you on TikTok? Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, don't worry about but this platform's bigger than this one, and my clients don't listen to this. They listen to all of them. Like, everyone's everywhere nowadays. And social media has its flaws, for sure. But it also is a free platform for us to share information. And I think if you keep in mind that it's not about you, it's not about your story, it's not about what you look like or what you don't do quite right, or it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just about getting what matters to you out into a space. And it's not the world. The world are not going to see your YouTube video or your Facebook Live. It will be a fraction of the world that will see that. But I think if you can commit to a platform that brings you joy, the one that you're already using, and think about what is the message that you want to share with people? What do you want people to hear? What makes you mad? What gets your fire burning in your belly? When I talk about certain subjects, you can hear it in my voice. I get really passionate about talking about it. So go talk about that. Show up. It doesn't have to be perfect. And if it means that you go and create a little sparkle in one person's life, or someone hears that and thinks, oh, do you know what? I'm going to reach out to this person and just contact them because I really needed to hear that today. That's where you have to get started. But like anything, if you focus on the desire, the reason, your why, the purpose of why you're doing it, then the media stuff kind of, will come off the back of that. I think if you go out with the initial aim to go and get featured on, in the Telegraph, for example, it's going to be a harder route to do that. But it's also about using platforms. Twitter is a great platform. The hashtag journo request. My team go in that every single day, search the hashtag journo request, connect with journalists, build some relationships with them. And the great thing about journalists is if you build a great relationship with one or two of them, they'll recommend you within their circles. And, like anything in life, it's about relationship building. So yeah, though there's so much more around personal branding that I can share, but I really feel like, think about the purpose, the desire, what's the message that you want people to be hearing, and choose a method, a platform that sparks your curiosity. If you like listening to podcasts, go and launch your own podcast, and just test it. And if it doesn't work and you don't enjoy it, that's cool. You can close it. But if it does, who knows where the opportunity will take you.
Really, really good stuff. Yes, go ahead, launch your own podcast, but continue, keep listening to this one.
Of course.
We've been speaking to Catherine Morgan. She's the author, another book you should get, of It's Not About the Money, 3 Steps to Becoming a Wealthy Woman. I'm going to get a copy of the book and actually give it to the women in my life, the ladies in my life. I'm surrounded by ladies.
Thank you.
Catherine, thank you very much for your honesty. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the work you do. Just as a parting word, tell us where we can find more about your work, more about you, and any parting words that you have for the audience.
Yeah, thanks so much, Abraham. I really appreciate being here with you today. And yeah, I would love to just drop me a message on one of the social channels. I'd love to hear what's landed for you in this conversation. I really like to explore that with your listeners. And if you would like to get a copy of the book, if you just go to the website, it's notaboutthemoney.com. We actually gift a free copy of the book. You just cover the postage. So yeah, if you would like to, and even if you're not a woman, you'll still get value from that book. It's just that our consumer community are predominantly women, so we've written it specifically for our audience. But you will get so much understanding about your own relationship with money, which I think is super curious as a financial planner, because it will ultimately affect your clients. There will be a bias going on there that we may be unconsciously aware of. So yes, that would be wonderful.
Catherine, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Abraham.
I'll be remiss if I don't thank my incredible team who worked very hard to put this program together. Thank you very much, guys. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Timeline Retirement Planning Software, and PyTech, low-cost flat fee model portfolio manager. And to you, our listeners, thank you for your time. I hope you've had as much fun listening to the program as we have making it. You can find more about the show at retirementals.co.uk, and you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Abraham on Money. Until next time, thank you.